Okay, so we are running a little Kahoot, kind of to reflect on the past few weeks, or some of the topics in the past few weeks, and we'll see what we get out of this. Yep. So is everyone joining? How many people? 12 out of 22, sitting below 50%. Well, that's not true. We're sitting at 50% because Rune and I will not cheat and not participate. 13. Okay, shall we leave it at that magical 50%, 50? Ah, there we go. Boundary. May also be an access problem because Kahoot is something. Not sure if everyone has. 13. Okay, well, I think that stabilizes around here. So let's just give it a go, I think. Up, there's someone joining. Great, brilliant. Rune, do you know, can someone join while we're on the right? No, right? So once it's logged in, that's it, right?
No, I think you can join later on as well, but of course you won't be getting high scores.
Ah, yeah, okay. Well,
yeah, but I think you can join as long as you see the pin number. You can join in the middle of the game as well.
Okay, cool. We still get people. That's good. 15. All right.
And if you're unclear about this, what I asked Christopher to do it, we did it last year as well, because it is not just a reflection by itself, but it also allows us to reflect on some of the educational aspects, some of the gaming aspects, and as to learning. So we will be using this later on when I start talking as well.
That's right. So, okay, let's give it a go. 15 is about there. Let's see if it actually works. Okay, CS Games Foundations. So it's just.
There is no audio coming. Is that because you didn't run it with the?
You want the button sound? I can do that.
Yeah, because that's the annoying part. I want the audio.
Do you hear it? Yes, you do, right?
No, you don't share any audio from the app. So you need to play it when you share the screen. You need to share it with the computer audio.
Yes, I need to share sound. There we go. So now you should have the annoying sound. Is anyone annoyed? If
No,
not, that's
hear it yet.
You don't hear the sound. That's so sad. It says sharing. You're sharing the sound on your computer. I'm not annoyed. Yeah, okay. That's also some reflection that someone is not annoyed yet, which is unfortunate because that's the purpose of that sound.
Exactly.
Let me press some buttons when I see them here. Share screen is okay. Our audio is the problem. It has worked for me in the past. I'm slightly. Anyway, does it still make the sound when the question is answered? No, right? So it's probably I need to switch to the same next question.
Yeah, probably just try.
Yeah. So, but let's do a bit of a reflection here. So we talked about the reasoned action approach. So let's see what we converge on. Let me move you guys out of my picture. So we had various choices. One of them was motivation, ability, and trigger. Experience, competence, and flow. Wow. Challenge and motivation, behavioral beliefs, normative beliefs, and control beliefs. That's right. So the idea here was basically to mix up a bit of the different theories because they all have different emphases, but they're very overlapping, right? So a lot of the concepts you'll actually find in various approaches, but it turns out that, well, you guys on the lower right were about rights. So it's about behavioral beliefs, the activities. If you're intending certain behavior, then it's first of all comes down to your own beliefs, then the beliefs of others. What do you think others actually do, and then how to what extent you can actually control it, right? So climate change, right? So you think reducing CO2 consumption is a good idea. Others do the same, but your ability to control it may be somewhat inhibited. So therefore, you may not be as committed to pursue activity in this direction. So that's the reasoned action approach. That's where the reasoning element comes in. If we look at the top left one, motivation, ability, and trigger, which model was that on? Well, let's leave it for later because we'll get there. So, and then we had challenge. There's some feedback, please. Yeah, the reflection is good. That was a tricky one. Yes. In fact, I didn't feel that one as being as tricky as that one here. That's actually a more tricky one. But we come back to that in a second anyway. So let's just see. Challenge and motivation. What was that one? That should be very. So put it this way: the main point about this model is that you will not be able to pronounce, or I guess 90% of you will not be able to pronounce the author associated with this concept. So if that's of any help. I'll check my totally. Okay, well, okay, well, that was the idea about flow that we talked, briefly touched up on. But yeah, so quite a bit of models. So I'm not surprised that it's a bit of a challenge to identify them. But we go on. Perhaps we have something that's more close to your interest. Where the fluffy cat is winning for now. Oh, an octopus. Scary. So and the rest has 0 points simply, but Fluffy Cat is currently running the show here. So we'll see how that establishes or how that's manifested over the next session. Let's see. Next quiz.
This time with audio, Christopher.
It came. Thanks. That's good feedback. So it actually was annoying someone. Good. Right. So, yep, I think you guys largely converged on this is a fun one, of course, right? So it was not entirely serious, but the key idea again, when you think about social psychology, one of the aspects is what is it essentially about, right? So, and it's actually about assessing people's in their social setting, right? So the influences of individuals on social behavior, and conversely, of course, the influence of social behavior on individuals. So those are the main 2 points that we just wanted to get across by discussing briefly those different models, right? The fact that individuals are actually quite susceptible to those challenges, but worse, that they're really, really hard to design, right? So if you don't need to worry about ethical boundaries, it's a lot easier to design. Unfortunately, we have to. So bad news on that one, but so nevertheless, that's actually a challenging one. And yeah, people are evil. I mean, we knew that before, so that is not the answer to that question. That is more a given. I'm joking here, of course, in case anyone feels touched by this. Okay, so let's see who. Well, this was really more like the high level one. Getting the story about right. Ascends, who's still leading the game? Who is it now? Oh, Leon made up for it. Okay. Neo, Bexo, Bensky. Okay, a lot of very tight actually. I think they got the ranking, changed the ranking algorithm to kind of make it a bit more dense in this upper league. So we'll see how it goes. What else do we have? Now perhaps we have more topical question. I randomized the questions actually. Self-determination theory. Cool. Yep. So I think we're largely on track. So the self-determination theory was really focusing on, identifying kind of core factors. It's always a bit scary to suggest, oh, those are the 3 most important things you need to focus on in order to kind of achieve high motivation. What were those? three things.
How easy a task is to do, how much you are affected by it, and how much interest you have.
Okay, now you get my mind juggling. So which theory was that one? I think this is not entirely self-determination theory. You're closer to which one was that one? Sounds to me more like another theory called BMAT, but we get there in a second. The motivation, ability, and trigger sense. That's right. The Besnik has an alternative bit. Yes, yeah. Thanks, Rune, for your hint. Car is always a good hint there. So Besnik suggested competence, need, and something. So that's good. I especially get the something is very generic. Something is always right, I guess. But we're looking for something with slightly higher specificity. But competence, spot on, as one of the key points, right? So that is the beginning part. What else? There's two other factors that we need to approach. Needs, it's of course generically kind of possibly true, but again, it doesn't really apply narrowly to this specific theory. So if we talk about self-determination theory, we're looking at which factors more immediately? Question mark. There's two other ones missing. Anyone? The reason is the self-determination theory is extremely important in most serious games. It's probably the most, whether implicit or explicit, most frequently applied there. So it's really worthwhile to kind of have this on top of your head when you think about it again and see if it's somewhat reflected. Yeah, Alexander, thanks. Exactly, right? So it's about autonomy and relatedness, right? On the one hand, it's, what do I know? I mean, the fact that I feel competent about a particular area, so willingness to talk about it, to share about it, then the ability to have some sort of control about it, right? So not just, share because I'm forced to, but actually wanting to talk about it and having the sense of discretion. Choice was an important point there. And then relatedness. That is relatedness. I'm thinking about it as relevance, right? Does it actually matter? Am I talking about something I'm super passionate about, with the discretion that I have in person, but that no one else cares about? If that's the case, well, then, then it will be a challenge to my motivation, right? So here, all those theories are not about right or wrong. They're all about how to elevate motivation, for whatever purpose, really. So exactly. So the car theory, if you like, competence, autonomy, and relatedness. That's right. Cool. Thank you. And on we go. Let's see what else we have. So who's leading the pack right now? Oi, Leon is, yep, cool. Liz close behind. It's quite tight. I mean, yeah. Okay, cool. A few more questions to mix it up a bit more. Yeah. That. Cool. Yep, that sounds like a solid response. You guys are on top of it. I'm happy you didn't go for the top left one, even though that's a different experience you might have had then. Cool. Yeah, that's right. So the BMAT is like this, what is referred to alternatively Fox model, right? So the idea is basically how can you motivate behavioral change, right? So it's not so much about maximizing motivation, right? We talked on the one hand about theories that look at maximizing motivation and efficiency and so on, all those aspects, and explain reasoning of individuals. Here's really more about triggers for change, right? So the idea is there, what's the motivation to perform a change? What's your ability, again, to some extent linked with the control, for example, of self-determination theory, the ability to perform such a change, and then the trigger that actually makes you do it or keeps you from doing it, right? Or falling back possibly, right? So this is the important point. So the idea is the BMAT model is built on the idea that there is a strong situational aspect related to any sort of behavioral change. That it needs to be some sort of trigger that makes you, reflect and realize, okay, I need to change my behavior, even though you may have had the motivation and you may have had the ability before as well. Behavior change equals motivation, ability, and trigger. So, but you guys got this mostly right. The other one was a bit of a distractor there. So, but fundamentally, it's the same. I think you get the idea. So the trigger is the key thing to take away for the BMUD motivational theory. If you guys have any question in between, just pop them in the chat. But I think it should be quite straightforward, this one here. Okay, so let's see. Of course, the most important bit, talking about motivation and gamification. Fluffy Cat is back up. Yep. Okay. So that's going to be a tight race. That's actually quite tight race. So it will be interesting. Let's see who's. Yes.
I think for fairness reasons, next time just make it more with 5 seconds, just for the timing. Just add 5 seconds for us to answer. Because
okay.
the time is not enough for us. I can't read fast enough and answer fast enough.
You mean the configuration of Kahoot?
So you don't. I don't know if you can determine the time or not.
Yeah. I think we can. I think I just left it at the default. But yes, sure. We can increase that. Unfortunately, I don't think I can do that now anymore. So. Okay, right, there's delay. Okay, I see. Thanks, Lama. Thanks for highlighting this. I'm sorry for that inconvenience. Here's the thing. Against the original expectation of marking you based on your response to the quiz, will not do that then. No. I mean, of course, jokes aside, that is just more like for reflection. But we'll bear this in mind for future iterations. Sorry for that in this instance in any case. Cool. All right, let's try another one. Another quiz question. Balancing refers to. Cool. Well, everyone got it right. That's good. So it was just a matter of clicking fast enough, which is of course not quite fair if we have such a delay problem. But the main point about balance is, you all got it right effectively, is that it's a complex concept, right? And it's not just a uniform idea of balancing the challenge of the game, even though most commonly that's the challenge for game designers in implementation, to kind of balance, for example, cleverness of the AI against the player and things like this. But here it's really diverse, right? It's both in terms of the ability, of course, possibly also that, but let's look more immediately at the social environment that a serious game may have. Then it's very important to kind of balance between different players, right? The abilities, and kind of to have a also sensible scaffold. Well, now I said the term. Rune will elaborate on what it is later. But so to ensure that you can commit players over the long term to actually perform behavioral change or direct to some, right? But it's of course also other aspects, such as, for example, the designer and player objectives. And in serious games, the designer objectives may not just be to ensure entertainment on the part of the player, as you know, but rather, for example, to learn something, to perform data collection, to have people use the game for prolonged periods, but not for entertainment purposes, and so on. It's also a form of balance there, but it's a complex concept that has multiple dimensions. And when you look at a game, it's always worthwhile thinking about which dimensions of balancing the designers possibly considered, and where the game can experience improvement. So you got this all right. Whatever your particular choice was. Okay, it's getting tight again. Yeah, that's dense. Okay. We'll make it. We're nearly there, by the way. Okay. Cool. Answer streak by LN. That's cool. Well done. And second last question. MDA. Cool. So yes, yeah, largely they are, right? So this is again more like memorization than anything else. The MDA framework is just too essential to forego. So it's worthwhile to kind of be aware of what it stands for, what it does. The essential aspects was basically that it reflects on the mechanics, what's possible in a game on the one hand, then the user experience, the aesthetics on the other side, how the user experiences and sees the game, and of course what the user then can actually do with the mechanics within the game, the dynamics, right? Some of them is not modifiable by the user directly, but many others are actually, and this is kind of the dynamics bit. So mechanics, dynamics, aesthetics, and again, remember the viewpoints vary from a designer perspective and vary from a user perspective. I hope that makes sense. So this is a completely generic framework. This is by no means specific to serious games. So just to be aware of it as well. Cool. But most of you got that right. Yes. Cool. Yep. Fluffy Kid is leading. And well, 5 players have an answer streak. So that's a good sign. You guys are kind of largely on track, I guess, in terms of the challenge here. Last and final question. Again, apologies for the possible delay, but yeah, for this time, we need to live with this. Let's see. Final one. Nice. Cool. Yeah. So it's a tricky one, right? So that's I think that's just the holy grail of serious games, right? How do you get the game right so that you afford, have sustained behavioral change, right? So that's the idea. And we talked a bit about the fact that there needs to be enough stimulus coming from a serious game on the one hand to afford change, but also on the other hand to ensure that people continue playing the game, but also that they're kind of not getting addicted to the game, right? So why shouldn't they get addicted? Wouldn't it be perfect for my pocket if they get addicted to my game? The one response here is then they start abusing game mechanics, etc. Yeah, of course, this is of course one concern, but well, the actual reason was a more psychological one, at least the ones that we put forward when we think about serious games. What do we want to achieve with serious games?
Well, it will not be only about teaching for now. It will lose the teaching and the learning effect, and it will start to be just entertainment and for playing.
Very good point. Very good point. Yeah, actually, it becomes an entertainment game again, possibly. That's a very good point. Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's one risk you can have if you have an entrenched play. Benjamin has another point here, which is yes. So it's going the same direction, that they start playing for the sake of playing, but not self-improvement, right? So that's the key idea. We want to afford sustainable behavioral change in the individuals, right? Because we also need to bear in mind you may deal with sensitive population in a way, right? So if you have serious games, that is a game that's made for rehabilitation or for other health-related issues, then you better don't abuse this to make them get addicted to the game, but rather afford a genuine change. And there's, yeah, the right, Alexander gets spotted on. Their behavioral change should kind of transfer and sit outside of the game, right? So when we talk about this, we think about the game as an external stimulus that is internalized by the individuals and then thus converts an extrinsic motivation to intrinsic motivation, right? Something you want to achieve over time. And there's one term that we have used, I believe, to describe this transition process, or at least the linking process between the extrinsic motivation that's provided by the game and the intrinsic motivation that's going to be built up. And this is a term we'll ask you again and again. And
is it that you are internalizing?
Internalize, yeah, that's right. This is the process that you are doing as a player, if you like, right? But when we talk about the game design, what the objective of the game design associated with this, what's the term that we use there? But you're fundamentally right. That's exactly what's happening on the individual level. I mentioned the term, and I will mention that term again and again. And we're likely even asking that in the exam. So, but we'll see. But what was that term? So, yeah, that's the problem. I forgot it as well. So, what do we do now, Rune? Should we just leave it for the exam? Well, it's the I'll drop it once more, but we talk about alignment, right? So the idea is to seek alignment between the extrinsic motivation, the intrinsic motivation, as mediated by the serious game. So it's an art and a science, I guess, of the designer to achieve this, right? You need to accommodate the different player types, backgrounds, domains, problem areas, and so on of individual players. So, and this alignment of the game is the key objective of any serious game that you want to have, meaning not making a player addictive, but affording sustainable behavioral change by converting, as one of you rightly said right now, to internalize basically the change and make it independent of the game. Cool. So talking about games, high scores. So how's the podium looking? Number 3 is Alex. Yes, well done. Number 2, Neo. Okay, I didn't see you before. And number 1. Oh, Bensky. Okay, right. So, and then we have the runner-ups. That's A and Fluffy Cat. That's right. So it's a very tight race, to be honest. And we have the delay issues, so don't put too much attention to this, I guess, overall. But thanks for participating. And I think me, as far as I'm concerned, I was reasonably, I was positively impressed by the by the overall commitment and achievements. Basically, you're kind of on the right track. I think have a look at the theories again here and there. It's probably quite helpful to kind of really get to the nitty-gritties, because dedicating only one session to it and talking about so many different theories is really confusing. I appreciate this, but when you look at games and you want to try to have an angle to analyze them, see what motivational theories underlie those, then it's maybe good to have those handy. So I did the thing I shouldn't have done, which is running well over time, I guess. So now, Rune, how do we do this? Do we give them a break?
We give them a break, and we are planning on me just giving half of the presentation today and do the other half next week.
Cool. Yeah, that's cool. Blame me. So
I will definitely, and you ruined my storyline, so I'll come back to that.
Oh, oops.
Yeah, right.
Okay, that's even worse. Okay, it's talking about alignment.
Right, yeah. I'll reflect on it. That's what learning is. How much time? 10 minutes or?
10 minutes sounds good. If there's no feedback, so let's make it 10 past 1, I guess.
10 past 1. See you then.
See you then.
So what I plan on doing, I have 3 main bullet points here for what we're going to talk about. One is a few more theories. Now, if you think we already covered a few theories and have them all confused, it's good to have a few more. And I'll talk more about the balancing act and about evaluating games for education. After how we did the Kahoot, I think that I would just do the first one now. And if we are done a bit early, then that'd be the case. But I think maybe we're going to spend the time till 2 o'clock anyway on going through the theories. Now, so the reason why we had the Kahoot first is to illustrate something with the has relevance to learning, and we did it. As I said, Christopher did do it exactly as I was thinking, if to have that kind of feeling. I mean, if you had played the game without Christopher's break-in, so you just went through all the questions quickly, one by one, then you will feel the stress of the music, the countdown, the questions popping up, and you feel kind of the competitive stress it is. Now, what happened is that if you use this model, is that Christopher took you back. So after you were stressed and trying to compete, then he got into reflecting mode. So you went from the system 1, very fast, intuitive, what did I remember, which is the question one, And then he broke you out of that and broke you back into, now let's think about this. What will happen and what was this and what will, so you get back into the system 2 thinking, the slow thinking, the rational thinking. And my point of doing so, what we did was a very good intro to what I'm going to say, because what we need to think about when we design games, when we design activities for learning is, are we interested in the system 1, this quick, intuitive, instinctive response, or are we going to favor and encourage the rational thinking? So the music, for instance, I feel the music stressful and I feel the countdown stressful. So it brings us over to this, okay, we need to answer quickly. And in that we get upset if we aren't competing on equal conditions. Oh, we are delayed here, or we can't read the answers in favor. So because that is the typical automatic pilot, this is the associative, this is the system 1 thinking. But if what we want to learn is, as Christopher was doing secondly, is to think about these theories, to reflect on this, to see how that's going to affect the game, we need to get out of this intuitive instinct mode operation. We need to go into the 5% we're using the brain capacity for, which is the rational thinking, and it takes a lot of efforts, and it's slow and logical. But because of that, we rather not want to do it. So it's kind of lazy. We would rather stick with the system 1, the intuitive and instinct, because it's so much faster, it's so much less efforts, and we can just use our intuition to answer. So the typical characteristics of the rational thinking is it's lazy. We don't want to do it because it's so costly. So we're going to save that mental power to where we really need it. And it also means that we are indecisive because we always see the other. If you think of a solution, we always see the disadvantages, the problems that needs to continue working along this path. For those of you who have the integration project in the Max program, we already talked about some of the cognitive biases. So cognitive biases are very much because we have this system 1. In system 1, we have this intuitive, this automatic pilot that takes these quick decisions, and they are many cases biased. So what we need to is to activate the rational thinking if we want to get past this some of the issues with the quick way of thinking. And I think that this is something we need to think about when we design games as well. What do we want? Do we want to have a skill and a drill game where intuition and instinct is important? We need to help the students create the right type of instincts, the right automatic responses, or do we want them to reflect? Do we want them to think about it and analyze and synthesize the results they have come up with? So we need to be a bit deliberate or conscious about what we want to achieve, what types of skills, and what type of cognitive mental activity are we activating. I think I'm going to allow myself a little bit of time now, and one story I think I want to share in this respect is, you know, in Norway, especially this winter, lots of snow up in the mountains. People like go skiing in the mountains, and every year people get killed in avalanches. So you go down a slope, and the snow just breaks over, and huge avalanche buries you down. And if you aren't getting out of the snow within 20-25 minutes, you're basically dead. That's the statistics. So there's a lot of analysis on this, and now we know that almost all who got killed, they have had training. They have been to training how to avoid avalanches, what to do if they're caught in an avalanche, and those get killed, they have that training. So why don't they learn? What's wrong? I mean, they should stay away because they know the dangers, they know what to do, what precautions to take. But what they find, or some of the problem is this. Now, if you go down the slope and nothing happened, what do you believe? You build up this trust that this was safe, even though you were so close to have an avalanche. You were so close to an avalanche, but you don't know. What you know is that there was no avalanche. And if you have hundreds of these, then if you look down and say, I've been here before, I have no avalanche, this feels good. But you've been so close 99 times or 100 times, and the 101th time it goes off. So this is on one side. If you have a game that is we want to drill the correct action when under time pressure, there's one type of thinking we need to do, the one type of activity we need. Now, if it's on the other side, if it's help the students to reflect and analyze and understand the concept, then probably music isn't good. Probably honoring or giving awards to the quick answer is not the right thing. And I don't know if you noticed, but the 3 winners in today's Kahoot, they all had 6 out of 7 correct answers. So their answers were the same. What differed was the speed in which they were able to answer. So the 3 top players, they know it's actually the same thing, but we gave the award to the one who was the faster. So if you would like speed to be important, then we are into the system 1, and that's one type of skills and one type of competence we are favoring. But if you decide, if you would like to have this cognitive, reflective thinking, then it's different. Sorry for spending a bit long time on this, but it's kind of a basic I think for that we have to think about when we design activities. What type of learning do we like to see? Now, going back to my favorite, defining concepts, and I did start that discussion a little bit last time. What is a theory? And not to think that the theory. Okay, Gunnar, you raise your hand.
Yeah, I asked what do you mean, but what was the meaning of the word lazy for rational thinking?
Lazy, it means that we don't want to do it if we don't have to, because it's so costly. So this is a way of thinking that we rather not go into. You follow me?
Oh yeah, all right, yeah.
We try to avoid it as much as possible. So we are kind of lazy getting there. We try not to get there, try not to have to, because it requires so much efforts. So we prefer the automatic thinking because it's much faster, much less costly. So rather than having to go through that, we try to avoid it, and that's what the lazy means. Good answer. Good question. Now the theories. So what I like to think about this when we talk about the theories is that I like to look at utility of things, meaning a concept. If you could help me do something, if you can help me accomplish something, I will be quite happy about it. And a theory, to me, I would meditate, as I said last time, I would many times rather talk about models, because these are kind of general descriptions of something that can assist us in the analysis and understanding of something. But according to the Oxford English Dictionary, it's a set of principles on which practice of an activity is based. So we try to find the basic principles, try to find a way of thinking, a general approach, so that when we have something special to look at, we can use these basic principles to analyze or to understand. So it's not like a law given by nature. It's more like something that we find useful in analyzing a problem. And the one I really like is that it's heuristic devices to stimulate thinking. So these are tools, utilities for us to help us think in the right way. And when we try to be diverse and trying to understand, not going into the system 1 quick response and quick analysis, be more reflective. It's helpful to base this on some principles, base this on some general or some heuristics that are collected in the field. Now, some of the theories, and I will not say much about the self-determination theory or flow theory, even though these are very valuable, and that's why Christopher already covered them, also in learning and education. But there are some that are closely related. We have the Vygotsky zone of proximal development, the achievement goal theory, and then some more specific. These are kind of general into learning, and then there are some more specific when it comes to how to develop educational programs, courses, and more systematic education. And then finally, I talk a little bit about a constructive view of how we learn, the experiential learning cycle. But let's start with Vygotsky. And to me, Zygotsky is quite close to the flow theory. And what if you remember the flow theory, it's boring if it's too easy, and it's scary if it's too difficult, and somewhere in between, it's of the right challenge level. And that's what I think the zone of proximal development also says. There's something you can do without help, and that is kind of routine job. It's kind of in the system one, you just do it and you don't have to think too much about it. And then it's in the red zone. It's everything that you just can't do. There's no way you could do it, even with help. It's far outside what you could do. And then in the middle, you have this area where you can do it, but you need assistance. You need help, and you can. And the idea is that you can gradually get into the red zone by gradually being better at the lower part of the zone of proximal development, because then it becomes part of what you master, and then you push this this zone of proximal development, you push it up towards what you currently can't do. What is interesting here is, and something that we shouldn't forget about when we make games, is that with guidance, that can be with an adult guidance or a professional guidance or a mentor, but it could also be with more capable peers. And one of Zygotsky's main focus was on learning as a social activity. So that's also something to think about in games. To what degree do we want the players to have unique individual experiences and challenges, and to what degree would we encourage and anticipate that the learning should happen with also capable peers, but in a social setting. And here comes the scaffolding that Christopher talked about. So scaffolding means that we need to get to the top. You can't just jump up. You need to provide help. You need to reduce the complexity of the problem in the beginning. As an example of scaffolding, I'm a climber. I'm a rock climber, and indoor climbing. I don't know how well you know about indoor climbing, but you could see indoor climbing. You could see these roots put up. So you have some holes, and you just screw them into the wall at various places. And then the task of the climber is to kind of solve the problem, because we create a problem, so they need to get to the top. And of course, it will help to be stronger. But what makes the biggest difference is how smart you are in using your body, how smart you are in saving power till the places where you need the power. Because if you go out and spend all the power from the beginning, you're not going to make it to the top. So we are creating problems that if I set a route, that the climbers will try to solve. So I was once organizing a little course for 3 of my fellow climbers, and tried to explain them or help them get into route setting, the job of creating a route. And I had my typical approach is that we went to the wall and looked at the options and say, okay, now find the part of the wall you like, and then we get back and look at all the holes and say, now pick out holes you would like to use, and now put up a route. And then I got to have a visitor from, well, actually Norwegian, but he was in Norway at that time, but he was not Norwegian. He was a world champion route setter. So he sets routes for the world championships, as well as for beginners and intermediate. And when I was telling him that I will do this course, he said, "No, why can't I do that?" And I said, "You have some other things to do." No, he wanted to do it. Now his approach, which was quite different to mine. Remember, I just tell the students, this is where you can put up the route. These are the holes. Go ahead. And he said, that's too complex. A new route setter can't do that. So you have to say, okay, in this line, this part of the wall, I give you these holes, and with these holes, you're going to create a route with this style. So choosing the place on the wall, choosing the holes, choosing the style of the route is just too complex. You need a scaffold, you need some help in the beginning, you need a constraint space, so the problem space, so that you can solve it. So with these holes, and we knew there were enough holes to put up a route and holes that could support the style we wanted. And it was one part of the wall where we had already foreseen or already assessed that this type of route could be made with this hole in this wall. Then you can say, now go on, be creative, try to explore. But say, giving them a blank slate, say go ahead, create something exciting. It's just too complex. There are too many variables that they can't control, and they can't see the complexity. So because of that, very much about what we do in learning or in education is about deciding how much scaffolding is needed. Because now, when we have a course now, and Christopher is always saying that he, at this level, at the master's level, he prefers you having some autonomy. He prefers you making decisions, and you can ask us, but we are not telling you what to do. We're not telling you how we're going to do it. You get to see this is a challenge, and you need to find, because at this level, we are high up here, so you don't need as much scaffolding as you would in the first year of the master or in the second year of the bachelor. So it's the nature of this way of thinking, is that you provide a lot of scaffolding in the beginning, and then you dismantle. So gradually you are able to do challenging tasks with little scaffolding, with little external help to frame the problem, to choose the tools, to choose the approach, to set up the deadlines. More and more, it's all left to you or to the students. If you have questions, you should just go ahead and write in the chat. I keep an eye on the chat, so if there are questions we can discuss, because I'm going to be having more of a system 2 approach, a little bit more reflective. I have a tendency to talk too much as well, but there's a little bit of time to think about what we're talking about, not just rush through it. The second theory, the achievement goal theory, it's also an interesting theory. It says that, and it's being used, the first time I came across it was in sports, because if you interview world champion in any sports, and many of them would say, and you ask them about the motivation, how did they become so good? And they will always focus on mastery. Some of them said, okay, when I was young, I was hoping to be a world champion. But what drove them through all these hours of practice was not that they thought they will be world champion at the end, but it was because the mastery. They really like to be the very best in their sports. And guess what? If you have the capability and you are the best in doing the sport, you will be the world champion. So rather than trying to be the world champion and hope that everything else comes in place, it seems like focusing on mastery in many cases is advantageous compared to performance. Doesn't mean that world champions aren't competitive and aren't worrying about performance. There is a split, but they have a high focus on mastery. And what we know from students as well is that some students really want to master. They are masters of interaction design or applied computer designs because they really want to be good at designing user experiences or developing new software systems. And there are some who are driven more by the performance. They want to get straight A's. They go to this master program, and they're if you ask them what's going to make them feel successful, they got to have straight A's. And quite a few you have it both. You will have, okay, I would like to have B or better so I can come to a PhD program, and I really want to master the subject. So you can't be the very best there ever was. I guess you can. It depends on what you mean by best. The good thing is that define best first. You can be the best at anything. And the interesting thing, so when this theory came up, it's that it was saying, okay, now some have a mastery approach and some have a performance approach. And in certain cases, one approach may be better than the other. We know that if you focus on the job, in many cases, that is more, you allow yourself to spend more time, you allow yourself to fail more than if you have a performance focus. With the performance focus, you will see failure as failures. In mastery, you will think that, okay, to master, I need to fail first, and then I can master. So you have different perspectives. So for certain, at least for certain activities, mastery might be, can be quite much better. But what we saw after, or what the researchers saw, is that it's not just that they have different approach, because some of them, their approach is actually to avoid, the avoidance. So what does that mean? Well, for some, especially after a while, when you study, you might want to go for straight A's, but after a while you say, okay, as long as I'm not failing, I'm happy. So you would avoid failing. So rather than getting an A, you would avoid failing in performance. Or if you started by saying, okay, my objective is to be a master of programming, what your goal becomes not showing everybody how much you suck in programming, if you understand. So and the scary thing from us as teachers is that very many students start with the mastery approach and end up with performance avoidance. So the first semester they come to university and they want to be the very best in their field, and before Christmas they are just worried about failing in mathematics or failing in programming or failing in some of these courses. So it's kind of scary in that we don't help the students maintain the positive achievement goal. And this is also now, I think, a challenge when we make serious games. We need to think about this. Are we focusing on mastery? Are we focusing on performance? Are we helping the players to have a positive approach, or are we helping the players to avoid? So for those of you who did not do the Kahoot, didn't you do the Kahoot because you thought you would already be failing? I mean, was it an avoidance reason for not doing Kahoot? Because games, some people will avoid games because they don't want to show bad performance, or want to show that maybe their mastery level isn't as good as the others. So some find it very encouraging because they have a performance or mastery approach and think the game is perfect in demonstrating that they have these capabilities, while other very easily will avoid going to the games because of this avoidance. So this can explain or help us understand some of the effects we are seeing on the use of games in education. Again, it's not binary, or it's not 1 of 4. So it's not that like you are going to be 1 of 4. The balance is going to be different courses, different during different times. I mean, before an exam it would be different than at the beginning of the semester or at the end of the study. So these things change over time, and they change by the task and the area. But it's something to think about also when we design games. I think that to keep on a positive approach, and I'll talk about balance later on, balancing the performance and the mastery aspects of the game. Bloom's taxonomy. Now I should have had my. In this case, I didn't have too many Mentimeter questions. I should have had a Mentimeter question here about Bloom's taxonomy. Have any of you heard about Bloom's taxonomy before? That's kind of the theoretical basis for how the study program has been organized into bachelor, master, PhD level, and also the progression throughout the study. Okay, no response. So I'll take it from the bottom anyway. So Bloom's taxonomy is a way to describe these skills that you are supposed to learn through studies or a course or anything you would like to learn. So at the lowest levels, these are kind of levels that go up like a pyramid. Not exactly like Maslow, but it's kind of similar thinking. So you have some basics. So first, you have the remember level. So recalling facts, basic concepts. And Christopher's Kahoot was very much there. What do you remember about the concepts and what they meant, and was the MAT, what was the abbreviation for? So in this case, typically your activities is to define concepts, is to duplicate, to list, memorize, repeat, and state. These are the typical activities. Next level is trying to understand. So you want to understand ideas or concepts. You would like to classify, describe, discuss, explain, give an example of, try to identify among a set, identify those who have, locate in a sentence, locate these type of construct, recognize something, report on it, select, translate. These are kind of higher cognitive levels. You need to not just remember what they are basics. First you need to remember them, and now you need to understand what they mean. And then we'd like to apply that information, possibly in new situations. So if you use mathematics, first you need to understand what the derivatives are, and then you need to get to see derivatives into use, and in application you're going to use derivation in certain mathematical operations. So typically here you need to execute some activity, implement, solve a problem, use your understanding, demonstrate something, interpret, operate, schedule, sketch. I mean, it's much more not just understand, but also to apply it in new situations. Then we come to the analyze. Now you start to see how things are connected, interrelated. You want to differentiate. So what is the difference between this and that? How can you organize? How can you relate things? Compare it, contrast, distinguish, examine, question, test. I mean, it gets into higher. So it's not just applying it. You can kind of categorize it, trying to create, abstract it up a little bit, or abstract away from the details. Evaluate. Now you need to be able to judge. You have two alternatives. Which is better? Why is it better? Selecting some things, providing a support for something, or as we have been doing this course, or will be doing, what is the negative aspects of this theory or this approach or this paper? What are the weaknesses? How can we weigh one thing against the other thing? And at the top, and this is interesting because it used to be different. So this, the fact that create is on top is on the newer version of Bloom. Originally, evaluate was on the top, but now it's we are seeing that it's even more challenging to create something new or original. And at the interaction design and applied computer science, at the master's level, we expect you to come up with something new, design something all new, develop something new, and being able to investigate something and create a new, all new, and original piece of work. So that's kind of the Bloom's taxonomy. And as the scaffolding, there's no way you can ask a first-year bachelor student to solve a new and original problem in the field. They need to first learn some concepts they can remember and understand, and they can apply them. They need to be able to get drilled in analyzing, and then evaluating or synthesizing if you want, and then finally use all that knowledge, but the knowledge, to create something that is new and novel in their area. And again, why are we talking about this here? Well, I think that when we develop a game, we need to think about, we can't do all of this in one. So we need to think about, is it a drill and a skill? If it's drill and skill, then okay, it's a remember and understanding. Is it a game where the students are encouraged to create? Then it's a very in their area. Then it's not create something, but create something that is novel with their level of skills. Then we are very much up here, and it's a very different game. Now, an alternative way of looking at pretty much the same, is a different dimension of the same. How can we categorize? How can we analyze? How can we provide a taxonomy for what the students are supposed to learn over time, from less skill to more skill? And this solo taxonomy, Biggs and Collins in 1982, says, okay, now the first is a piece, you have a piece of knowledge that is isolated and it's pre-structured because you know something, but that's everything you know, so you can't relate it to much. This is one piece of knowledge, and I guess the first time you learn addition at school, that's as much as you could do. You could take two numbers and start collecting, putting it together. But then gradually we create a structure of that one concept. So mathematics. So we have the plus and the minus. Start to seeing how plus and minus relate. and maybe read negative numbers. So here we are able to do simple procedure. We are able to define and identify certain things. It's not just a singular point of knowledge. We are starting to see a little bit of a system, and we can define it, but it's very much unistructural. It's within one. Then multistructural. You are able to start comparing this to different dollars. So you can describe various phenomena. You can list them. You can combine them. You can provide algorithms. So you can see multiple concepts at the same time, and be able to distinguish between them and explain them. And then you are able to relate them much more, be able to classify, analyze, compare, formulate new questions that goes across, not just the individual. You don't know just mathematics and electronics, but you're able to use mathematics and electronics to combine the things and the various pieces of knowledge you have. And then what they call the extended abstract, and it's a bit of a strange name for that class, and I think it's very much about being able to abstract. So it's being able to theorize, to generalize, to create hypotheses, to reflect. So you're seeing this relational system as just an example of something higher order. And you can use that to higher order example for other types of systems and understanding you have. So what you can see here is the same way. It's the same way of thinking, from the simple to the harder, but it's not now from from remembering and understanding to creating. Now it's more how many concepts, and to what level do you understand the concepts, at a very concrete level, so you can describe one, you can list the other ones, you can compare them, or to the level where you can really create a general theory model and hypothesize because it's similar to something else you've been seeing. So it's kind of cognitively more complex. You have a much larger network and concepts that you're involving in these activities. Did that make sense? I hope so. Again, the whole purpose here, I think, is that when making a game, I think it's a good idea to think about, okay, what here, or where are we? Because if you try to address everything, we're definitely not going to provide the scaffolding we need, and it's not going to be so targeted and so aimed at solving one type of educational training. Then we have Biggs and Tang, constructive alignment. That has become a topic I would say last 10 years or so, it has alignment, and Christopher mentioned alignment, and we're going to be mentioning alignment, and this is really a reminder that also what we do in education should be aligned. So the thinking here boils down to 3 elements that should be quite well aligned. The first is the course learning outcome. I don't know if you read them carefully, but we spend a lot of time on defining them, so it'd be good if you read them. And the purpose of the learning outcome is to define, what do we want the students to learn? And I think that should also be something that we should have into the kind of the starting point of serious game development. What is the purpose of the game? What is the outcome? What should the players learn? What do we expect them to learn from playing this game? And then we need to design activities. And if we say that the students should learn reflection, then we can't just give them lots of drill and skill exercises. Then we need to provide exercises that will allow them to explore the reflection skills, to fail a bit on the reflection, to reiterate on the reflection, to get feedback on the reflection. So learning activities need to be very well aligned with the learning outcome. So to make sure that the students actually do get the skills. And if you think about game, what does it mean? Well, if we like the students to learn, let's say, I have a master student now. She's doing now a game for history education, and help the students understand the various perspectives and see how their perspective may affect their understanding of what was happening. And if in doing that the player needs to master a pretty complex 3D game, meaning that they need to learn a lot of skills if they didn't have it already in operating in 3D, is that very well aligned? I mean, a lot of the time they use is not going to be for the purpose of history reflection. It is to master the game mechanics. So we need to think about that alignment. How well is what they spend the time on in the game versus the learning outcome that it was designed. So this is an important, and we come back to that, I guess, next week when I'll talk about balance, because alignment and balance are tightly connected. And then guess what the last one is? Assessment. Okay, in the end, we're gonna assess here. And Simon's, who used to have who kicked off the serious games course, he used to give this example. Now, let's say that you have two options for learning to play tennis. Either you get a racket and a ball, and you get out there and you play with the ball, or in a game you play with a digital game and a digital ball and whatever the game looks like. So you look at your strokes from either using a camera or something, and you drill your tennis playing skills through the game. The other is that you read a lot about the theory of tennis playing, the angles of your arms and the motoric parts and everything. Now, so you have these two alternatives, and you have students, and now you're going to measure how well they learned tennis through this course, through these two alternative course. I'm quite sure that the outcome would be quite different if you put them through a practical test in front of either a real playing situation or in front of the game, or you get a written exam. So the learning outcome may be the same. The activities are very different, and depending on how we assess, these learning activities may be good or bad. They need to be aligned. So if the activities are very much hands-on, then there should be much hands-on as well. Now, guess what? How many courses do you have where it says lots about skills, in programming skills and reflection skills, and in the exam we get a written exam. so we still have a way to go here. That's why constructive alignment is important in teaching in general, but also for serious games. We need to think about how are we gonna, if you use games in education, how are we gonna assess the students' benefits from playing the game. And I was participating when the student I mentioned, she was interviewing a teacher in social sciences, and she used a number of games. And she said the reason why she was using games was that, number one, because her way of using games was to have the kids play like Poor in America. So which means that each player had a certain amount of dollar per week, and that's for the family. And the family, they have the car broken down, they have clothing needs, they go to school, they have a dog who needs to go to vet, lots of things that need to prioritize. And they were having just this $100. And she said the benefit of using that game or such games is that it was not the game that learned the students anything, but the three things I think she mentioned. Number one, through that they developed a vocabulary for discussing these type of social phenomena and social issues. Number two, they actually had an experience to reflect on, because the learning happened in the classroom. The learning happened when they discuss certain points of views and certain things. And she said that the best thing now is that she could ask every student, what did you find difficult in this situation? What did you find about that? Because they all had an experience to base the reflection on. And number three, she said that they all had a set of points of views. They had seen this not just from one point of view, but they had seen the problem that they were to discuss, to reflect on from different angles, and therefore could have a different depth in the discussion. So the learning activity was playing a game, but it was assessed in the discussion afterwards, or the assessment was based on the reflection and discussion, because the purpose of the game was not for them to or one was being a major and being a mayor, and being a mayor in the city, so you need to balance the various needs of the inhabitants. So you have more than 50% supporting you in the next election. So if you got reelected, you won. If you didn't get reelected, you try again. Try to balance the needs and the requests from your inhabitants in different ways. So so it's not learning wasn't depending on whether you failed or won the game. It was more, what depth would that give to your understanding and the reflection afterwards. So it needs to be aligned, these three things. And I think for us as designers, it means that we need to think about what do we want to learn. We need to ensure that these activities are in line. So what the students spend time on, and of course there will be some time spent on general skills, like reading skills, like drawing skills, like playing in the 3D skills. I mean, there might be quite so it's not like it can spend any time on that, but there needs to be a good balance between the time you spent on mastering the game versus being immersed and into the activities. And then finally, how this is going to be assessed in the end. Okay. This is the name of this course. It says a lot of theory, a lot of things one way, and you don't give you much break to digest in between. I'll before we end the day, I promise I'm going to stop after a couple of more slides. Talk about the Kolb's learning cycle, experiential learning, because this is, I mean, it's not the only theory, it's only not the only way of learning that is being described, but I think it's quite relevant for both the type of education that interaction designers and applied design students are involved in, and also for games, because first, what Kolb is saying in experiential learning, very much of learning starts by you having a concrete experience. And as I said, this social science teacher, she wanted the students to have experiences from these games. That was a starting point. But learning happens once you start to reflect on that. What happened? What did we see? What happened? How can we understand this? And then based on that reflection, we have this abstract conceptualization. It means that we create an understanding of the problem in our heads. We're trying to say, okay, now what does this mean? And how did this happen? And what were the relationships here? And based on that conceptualization, we can formulate theories. We can formulate what we think will happen if we did this. And that's the purpose of the active experimentation. Now we're trying to say, okay, now if I'm right, then this should happen. And then we go ahead and design an experiment. And then we try to see, okay, our concrete experience, did it confirm? Did it extend? Did it reject my conceptualization? And then I need to reflect. And I can go back and refine my conceptualization, create a new experiment, and that gives me a basis for a new concrete experience. And this is where I think games by nature can be very good. They give you a starting experience, and we reflect, and you build up. And if you think about scaffolding at the same time, so if you design the game so that you make sure that they learn something, that is just too simple. So their first understanding of the problem, you're going to give them a shock by giving them something, a new experience that breaks their understanding, and they need to go back and rethink and realign and try to build a new, more advanced understanding. And they go back into gameplay, and we shock them again, and gradually they get to see what they thought were quite simple concepts. It's actually quite more complex. But then they really understand and have gradually developed a more advanced and complex conceptual understanding and way of seeing the problem. So they have a more, accurate understanding. And this is where I think games can be good in having levels, providing, and with the scaffolding thinking, providing something simple in the beginning and develop some crude but basic understanding, and then gradually break it down so they have to advance it in certain directions, certain areas. Okay, that's what I'm going to say. I have a little bit of reflections. There needs to be some interaction, and it's going to be a system 2 thinking, this reflection. So I have no music, no timer, no stress, nothing. And let me share this other. Let's see if I find my. I think it should be here somewhere. No, not there. There. Yeah, I hope you can see that. So my question is, what did you find most surprising and or useful in the theories I've been talking about so far?
I'm not sure, but was there a code for us to join?
Yes, is there not? Oh, it says presentation closed, so there is no code. Sorry, I'll start it, and then you should see the code quickly, I hope. Oops. Is it closed still? Sorry, I just let me just stop sharing, and I just find the code. It's good, Christopher, that you both have problems. I just go here. This is the problem here is I duplicated a previous presentation. Now, if you duplicate, it also duplicates the closed flag. So since I closed the previous one, now the new one is also going to be closed. But now, in 2 seconds, it's here. Now you can see the code 34, 34, 45, 3. So if you go to menti.com, 3434 453. And I don't know, Christopher, but I think we can just bring the results from here into next week. So we don't need to, I mean, as soon as you, I think all of you should try to answer. And when you have, we can just leave it like that. And then we start next week going through your answers here.
Sounds good.
Anything you would like to say at the end of the day?
Me?
Yeah.
No, nothing particular. No. So my encouragement again: form your groups. That's the homework, I guess. I mean, next week is occupied by Rune, as it stands, so. But afterwards, it's actually your turn. So we'll reiterate over this. But please commit to your groups and take the time and effort kind of to form them. And if you have questions or issues, or you seek group members and so on, use Issue Tracker, Discord, or whatever other tool that's at avail. So there's quite a bit there. And I mean, I saw a really positive interaction on the Issue Tracker. So just in terms of group forming, so use that. But that's it from my side, I guess. Yeah, thanks, Rune, for sharing some insight on the basis for the educational theory. So this will be strongly relevant, of course, for the ones that are doing education-related serious games, right, and training-related serious games, because you need to think about those concepts. But I think you go into that more instead of me anticipating possible.
But as you said already, most serious games is about learning. So it's
ultimately, yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
cool.
Maybe not the more solo and the more education oriented, but thinking of what do we want them to learn and the ways of learning, I think it is quite relevant still.
Yeah.
So five answers so far. I would be quite happy if we had more of you just answering just a couple of sentences. What surprised you the most? And hopefully we can start next week discussing whether you find any of these useful at all, and how, and what the implication should be. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.